So Happy New Year. It's 2017, or as someone told me earlier, it's 2017. Same thing, right? In your bulletin, you'll find, I don't know what color yours is at this point in the day, but it is a devotional guide, and this is an introduction to kind of where we're going this year as a community of faith. As we begin this new year, our hope is that we can connect to something deeper in ourselves and in our relationship with God and each other. And so this week will be the introduction to the rest of the year and what we're going to be doing together. And so I invite you to take it home with you, and that way you can go deeper, or you can go online, and it's on the website, I do believe, as well. So it's a new year. And I have to be honest with you, 2017 is one that I've been waiting for quite a while. Last year has been an amazing year around these last 2 years, but this year for me has been this year that we've been working towards, and I'm so excited that it's finally here. And so today I'm going to start the sermon out with why I'm excited it's here, and then dive into this scripture that you all just read and probably have it memorized, right? Blessed are the, for theirs is the. So if you didn't get it by the end of the service, you're going to get it, because we're going to do that a few times, so that way it sticks. Is that my microphone? Maybe it's the spirit we're moving, right? Yeah. So 2017 is a big year in the life of our church. The reason is it's our 130th anniversary or birthday of the merger of two ancient churches that came together called Fort Street Church and Siemens Bethel and joined together forces and created Central Union Church 130 years ago. How many of you all remember that? The reality is that we have this huge history, and this year is this new year that we now enter into to celebrate the history of what we have found ourselves in. In order to kind of highlight that, this past week, for 2 weeks, my family and I were in Florida hanging out with my family, and we are partial to Florida in a major way because we had all of our kids there. And so we forced our kids to go down memory lane with us. Oh, how they loved it. And so we went by the hospital where they were all born and said, there's the hospital where you're all born. And let me tell you how adorable each of you were. And just perfectly made because God created you. And then we went by our old house where we first brought them home and showed them where they grew up. And 2 of them don't have a remembrance at all of that place whatsoever. And then we took them by the church that we served and the experiences that we had at that church. And then we went to our favorite restaurants. And then we took them to the beach, because it was a coastal town, and we took them to the beach, and as we're walking over the dune, they're like, what's that smell? The beaches in Florida stink this time of year. And so my mom goes, oh my gosh, you guys are beach snobs. What happened to you? You used to love this beach. And we were like, it's called Hawaii. And the beaches are a little bit nicer than Florida's beaches. And so we took them throughout this experience and the experience of our life that we had there for 6.5 years. And we've been gone as long as we were there. And going back, it's the first time I've been back in for quite a while. And my family lives there still. And I sat on my mom's lanai, and I was hanging out, and I noticed the number of airplanes that fly over because there's a flight safety school there. And so these little planes that fly over. And as I was sitting trying to work on the sermon, this phrase jumped back into my mind of a guy that was my mentor for 2 years. His name was Bob. He was a Navy chaplain and was real high-ranking Navy chaplain and left the Navy and retired and became a parish minister and served large churches around the country. And for some reason, he saw me and decided that he was going to mentor me about what it meant to be a minister. And so every other week, we'd sit down with his very clear agenda. He was a Navy man. No time to waste. Got to be on the dot, right? 1 hour meeting. And every other week, he used the cocktail napkin. You know what those are? The little square napkins that they put underneath of the drink so that when they sweat from the humidity, it catches all the sweat. That was his chalkboard. And every week, he would sit down with his little napkin and write something down and say to me, most of the time I looked at him and said, I have no idea. He would say, 2 weeks from now, we're going to get together. You need to tell me what it means. Towards the end of that 2-year period, I was getting ready to be ordained and leave and go to another church. And he said, your final lesson is this, and wrote it down. And it was a simple question, or rather a statement, that took me years to understand. David, you're becoming who you already are. David, you are becoming who you already are. I smiled at him and said, Bob, what are you talking about? He said, there'll be a day when you finally understand it. And when you do, David, then you'll understand something truer about yourself than you ever knew possible. It took me years to figure out what in the world this man was talking about. In essence, what he was saying is that I am already who I am. I don't have to earn it. I don't have to build it. That when God knit me together in my mama's womb, God made me in such a way that everything I needed to understand God and life and humanity was already there. And the rest of my life is about understanding who I already am. I'm loved. I'm redeemed. I'm accepted. I'm embraced. There's much more depth underneath of here than I even understand yet, because I'm still in my 30s for 2 more weeks. Someone told me once you hit 40, you get wise, so I'm hoping something happens 2 weeks from today. But this statement about becoming who we already are is not just a statement for me as an individual, but it's for us collectively as a church. We at Central Union Church are becoming who we already are. We're a 130-year-old congregation formed from a merger of 2 other congregations that have a heartbeat of mission, that the very essence of the reason why we exist is the mission of God, that we are a missional people invited to carry out God's mission in the world. Early in the 1900s, the minister of the time was the guy by the name of Reverend Dr. Scudder. And Reverend Dr. Scudder wrote, the only thing that I've ever seen of his is this little note describing the church that he had found. That as he came here and understood the culture of this church, this is what he wrote. From the beginning, the character of our church has been intensely missionary. Its aim has been to live for others rather than to develop itself. From the beginning, the character of our church has been intensely missionary. Its aim has been to live for others rather than to develop itself. The reason why I'm so excited about 2017 is that I believe that this is the year that we become who we already are in a whole new way. To put it in context of the ancient history of this church, in the 1800s, this church was birthed out of a merger, founded in the early 1800s by the Seaman's Bethel and the Fort Street Church. They did things in the community to try to bring hope and grace and love and God's presence to it. And in the 1900s, it sounds so long ago, doesn't it? Way back when in the 1900s, how many of you remember those? Most of us. This church grew and grew. In fact, Fort Street Church, they outgrew so fast they built another church downtown. And they outgrew that one so fast they built the sanctuary in the 20s. In order to be a place that's large enough for the community to gather, to hold worship and community events, and to be a source of light and hope to the community around it. From that was birthed a gazillion things that you're going to learn and hear about all year long. Seeds that grew into these massive trees of impact in our community. Churches and organizations, and the lives that were touched because of the ministries of this church. And then in the early 2000s, they built this thing, the parish hall, and the Family Life building next door. And in a season of transition for a decade, this church went from being on mission to trying to survive, if we're honest. And the church shrunk. And a few years ago, you had this weird belief that you could hire a 30-something-year-old guy from the mainland to come and to help participate in this church understand who we already are. So in 2014, my family and I arrived on a rock in the middle of the Pacific into a culture that we'd never experienced before and wondered, who are we as a community of faith and what are we supposed to be about? In 2015, we adopted as a community of faith a mission statement that we would be a church that engages and embraces all as we seek to embody Christ. And since that time, we've been tirelessly working on making that a reality in our lives. And so what we've had is moments of great experience in which we've gone, wow, can you believe this is happening? And quite honestly, moments of which I've said, wow, if we survive this, we're going to be lucky. We've had this up and down thing, but 2017 is different. Because in 2017, we are going to fully embrace who we already are. We are a missionary people, on mission for God, to change people's lives and go into the community to be light and hope to another. And we're no longer living in this transitional period. We're done with that. At the end of last year, though we aren't fully where we want to be, we are way further ahead than we were 2 years ago. You all have become an incredibly generous people. And so our finances are better than they've been in years. This church is growing. In fact, Kelly told me at the beginning of the service that we've added even more chairs to this service because we don't know what to expect every week. Because some weeks, you guys don't leave us enough space for chairs. Then what we're watching in this community is that all of a sudden the community outreach is very focused about how we can bless the larger community around us. World Mission came up to me this morning, a couple people from that, and said, we have some huge ideas, but we haven't shared it yet. Do you think it's time? We are a people that are becoming who we already are. And so a couple months ago, you gave me the permission to leave for a week, to go pray and discern and listen to the Spirit's voice about what we should do for sermons and focus our church on this year. First 2 days were very peaceful and quiet, but frustrating as all get out, because I kept praying, God, send me a word, send me something, anything. And it was like, hello? You there? And I was reading a book, and it was a moment in time where it snapped. And this is what snapped. This year, 2017, our 130th anniversary, is the year that we reclaim our missional heritage for the 21st century. We reclaim our missional heritage for the 21st century. What does that mean? It means that we have a storied past of the 1800s and what this church did, and we can't do it again. And we have a storied past of the 1900s and what this church did, but we can't do it again. We live in the 21st century, in the 2000s, in which there is new needs and new opportunities that we never knew would be possible. We have technology that has reshaped the world in which we live. And in this month ahead, you're going to have an app that you can put on your phone. We're going to have a new website, and we're going to start living into a new world that we now dwell in. We must be a people that reclaim our missional heritage for this day and this age in order that we can be prepared for the next one that's to come after us. It doesn't mean that what's happened in the past is bad or irrelevant. It means that it's history. And the great danger of churches is that we try to redo history in the same way in a new world. Instead, we're going to dive into what it means to be God's people in this community today. So how do we do that? For me, it goes back to the story of Jesus Christ. That if we are a church, we are inspired and under the leadership of the head of the church, Jesus Christ. And so we go back to the very basics of our faith. And so this week, we started an 8-week series on the Beatitudes. The Beatitudes are 8 short sentences of Jesus' primary teaching that are the first words of teaching from Jesus' mouth in Matthew's gospel. Of these 8 sentences is everything that we need to know about ourselves and who we already are. So what is a beatitude? A beatitude is that which provides a brief summary of essential ideas or doctrines. It's the essence or the fuel of what it means to be God's people. And so the first one of the fuel is the one that you all just read. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are the... Okay, let's wake up. Blessed are the... For theirs is the... It's a curious phrase to me. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven, because it goes against everything that we're taught in our culture. We are taught that we're supposed to be self-sufficient. We're taught that we're supposed to be strong and tough, and we're able to do it by ourselves. And to be poor in spirit is the exact opposite of everything that our culture's taught you. To be in Thank you. To be poor in spirit is to mean that we are invited into a different realm called the spiritual realm. And in this realm, we function differently. It's not about how strong you are, but instead it is about how weak we are. There's a word that's used in our culture that is seen as negative, but actually is quite powerful. The word is powerlessness. Everyone say it? Powerlessness is this idea that is almost countercultural to everything that we believe, isn't it? But in essence, that is the root of understanding the spiritual realm and entering into it. The first step of the 12-step ministries is one that has profoundly shaped our culture in the last 100 years, specifically my life. Step one, we admitted that we were powerless over blank, that our lives had become unmanageable. We admitted that we were powerless over alcohol, my problem. We admitted that we were powerless over drugs. We admitted that we were powerless over shopping, over food, over meism, over sexism, over whatever that thing is that ultimately we just boiled down in the Christian church and call sin. And it's not until we admit that we are powerless over it that we can overpower it. We overpower it by the Spirit of God, not by will and not by strength. We are people invited to tap into a source that's greater than anything that we have within ourselves. To be poor in spirit means that we have created a wealth of willingness to try something new. One theologian has said, the two greatest prayers that we'll ever pray are help me, help me, help me. And thank you, thank you, thank you. They're not terribly hard, are they? But the story of Christendom is a story of humanity screaming out to God, help us, help us, help us. If it worked to be stronger and to be smarter and to be braver, we wouldn't have world problems anymore. But I don't know about you, I've watched the news in the last. We have a plethora of problems. Maybe it's time to try on something better. And so in our powerlessness, what we are doing is admitting our humbleness, our need for something greater than ourselves. The story of our faith is that God comes to us in our weakness to be our strength. You get that? That's the story of Christian belief systems. At the root of it, it isn't about how smart we are or how capable we are or how good we are. It's a story about that we just can't get it right. There's some kind of kryptonite within us. And we're trying to overcome it, and we can't figure it out. And God says, psst, guess what? I got good news. You are who you already are. Trust me. I'm going to lead you to discovery of what that means. And when you discover it, there's a freedom of soul, a lightness to life. And it doesn't mean that you're immune from problems and struggles and pain, but instead you have a way to live through them. Raniero Cantalamessa says it this way. God is not induced to act on behalf of the poor or the poor in spirit because of their merits or their moral dispositions, but because of their greater readiness to believe. God does not value what the poor have, but what they do not have. Self-sufficiency, a closed attitude, a presumption of being able to save themselves. To be poor in spirit, literally in the Greek, is mean to have nothing. Or in the Hebrew, to be bent over. As in, there's so much that I don't have, there's no response I have but then to beg. To be poor in spirit is to go against everything you have been taught in our culture. And to end up finding out that you're stronger than you ever believed possible because there's a different strength working in you. I wonder in this 2017 year, if maybe for the first time what we discover together is that God is already doing far more among us than we ever dreamed possible. That we already are who we are becoming. That we're discovering bit by bit why we are here and the role that we play today. Today's been a really exciting day for me. One, because I woke up super early because I'm on East Coast time still. As I'm not tired yet. But I'm really excited because after each service, I've had people come up to me and say, how can I get involved now? I said to them, email me, because I don't remember that you came and talked to me today. But what I'm watching in this church is that as we reclaim our heritage and our missional belief is that we are on a mission. And the mission isn't to make me happy. And me is whoever you are. The mission is to accomplish God's heart in this earth by using people like us that are willing. 2017. We're becoming who we already are. And the portal into is a humility to say, I don't know what I don't know. God, help. And through that portal, we enter into a whole new realm of God's strength and power. And so I want to end today by sharing this verse from a different translation. The translation is called The Message. It's a paraphrase. And this verse about being poor in spirit may make more sense when you hear it this way. So listen closely. You're blessed when you're at the end of your rope. With less of you, there is more of God and God's rule. You're blessed when you're at the end of your rope. Anybody ever been there? With less of you, there is more of God and God's rule. May we live into the fullness of being poor, so that we may find the richness of faith and the God who does far more than we could ever dream possible. You are a beloved people, not because you've earned it, not because you know the right things to say, but because you were created by a God that loves you immensely more than you'll ever know. So let's go on a journey together and discover what it means to be us.